the dining room. Pretty small. And then it just has the recessed lighting. I know I'm being very dramatic about this, but I can't figure out which of these creams I like. To me, it's drastically different. I know this probably sounds crazy, but I just can't figure out. They're not really showing up well on camera, but it's so hard for me to figure out which one I want. So I'm mid-project and someone's like, why don't you just go ahead and record it? So I apologize that I didn't record everything. I was like, I didn't really think anyone would find this interesting, but obviously someone did. So I'm just gonna give you like a little bit of a detail on exactly what I got going on here. If you're doing something custom, another way to save money I really found is to buy things used. I mean, because to be honest, in most cases, a lot of the older things were made so much better than they're made today. And so, for example, this came with different chairs. I'll probably insert a picture somewhere. But this table was $200. Realistically speaking, I probably could have talked the guy down. But I just gave him $200 because it came with six chairs. I didn't really like the chairs it came with, so I ended up going with some chairs I found for $100 at a hotel liquidator. And so those right there, so a total of $300. You can't really beat that for chairs and a table. Now I did end up spending a little bit more, like I said, because I ended up doing the customization with the fabric. But in the end, it's still significantly less than what you would pay normally. I didn't record the complete disassemble of the chair, but you just take everything off from the bottom. Not really much to see. Screw everything out. Screwed off the legs, the seat, and the top of the chair here. And so I'm just gonna first go through and just pull all of this off so I can put the new fabric on there. Okay, so excuse the ashy legs that's about to show up in the ridge match socks, but I'm going to show you how I pulled this off a little bit. So I've already started at the bottom here, and I'm just gonna pull off the piping. All the way around. On the back of both chairs, there is like a seam design. Not sure if I'm gonna keep those or not. Maybe I will. I think I probably will. But this is just how it looks on the outside, and then this is how it looks on the inside. And they just used like some stabilizer there, so I may or may not do that, but this is what the inside looks like once I pulled it off. Here's two that I took the fabric off of. Just want to show you the difference. So for this one, I have to clean this up a bit, but I was able to take the fabric off and keep the staples pretty much still intact, which is good because I don't have to pull out all the staples. But for this one, I don't know, maybe because I noticed that the other leather chair was the same, so maybe it's because of the fabric. But so this one, I'll just go through and pull some of the staples that came up, and then the ones that did not come up, I don't have to worry about taking those out. But this one, on the other hand, is a bit more work because, as you can see, the linen chairs, when I pulled the fabric off of those, it popped a lot of the staples. So for this one, I'll have to go through and take those out. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this, but these are the tools I have right now, so that's what I'm going to use. And so what you want to do is you just want to go through and pull out all the staples, and it helps to wiggle it at the end because you don't want to get half of the staple still stuck in the chair. I really wanted to stain the entire chair, but it was just taking entirely too long. So what I went through and did was I just sanded down some of the uneven spots and some of the spots where there's nicks, and then I'm just spray painting them. And then once I'm done spray painting, I'll just go over with some gloss. So now that I took apart the fabric to make a pattern, I'm just gonna pin it down and then cut my fabric according to the piece that I took apart. This is the piece that I cut out, and I'm just gonna serge around the edge just because it unravels so easily, and that'll make it easier to use this one as a pattern to cut out the other 3 chairs. I'm gonna make some piping, so I'm trying to do the casing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut a couple inches wide of fabric. It doesn't have to be an exact, and you'll see what I'm gonna do with it. These are the pattern pieces cut out, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and cut out the pattern for the seat. The seat's gonna be a little bit different. So I'm not going to use the existing piece of fabric as a pattern. I just cut a square piece of fabric, and I'm just going to go ahead and staple that on, starting at the middle and then ending at the edges.
Because I've been using this app.
So this is what it looks like after I stapled it.
You don't have to invest like a full price of the stocks. You can invest whatever amount of money that you have, but it's also like a Twitter feed that's on.
Right. Well, when
if this was for a customer, I would probably cut a new piece. I mean, it looks a little raggedy. But since it's just for personal use, I'm just going to go ahead and staple this back on here. And I just took this off from the original fabric. On my sewing machine, so I have the... So for this, I'm just going to sew the back and the front together at the top. And so I just have the right sides together. So all the strips I sewed together, and then I just cut this piping as long as the chair sides. So I just measured how long it needs to be, and then I just cut it according to the length. And then sew it closed. Whew. So now I'm going to take the piping and I'm just going to sew it to the sides of the fabric all the way down. But when I start sewing, I'm going to sew from the middle here just because it starts a different fabric. So I don't want it to be, to not line up. Once the piping is sewn on, this is what it looks like. Now I just have the chair facing down and then also the fabric right side down, and I'm just going to put this cardboard trimming right at the bottom, and I'm going to staple that on and then flip the fabric up and then start stapling along the edges, and you'll see once I do that. This is how it looks stapled, and I'm just going to flip this up.
And where there is no vision, we perish. And your gift brings you into a room you wouldn't otherwise get into. And now you're exposed to people who think differently.
And then I'm going to go through, tuck
this,
this, and just staple inside the crack here. So I'm going to staple inside the seam. And I'm going to do that all the way up and through the front. And then this is what it looks like stapled. So I stapled it down. And now I'm just going to screw everything back together.